Hi, if you're watching at home, I forgot to record again, and we kind of went too far for me to start over. We're talking about question one, where Saleh, in the middle of mourning for the sniper Ali Akbar, is sleeping in the place where he and his team often sleep. Suddenly, there's a TV playing a Hollywood sci-fi fantasy movie, and the fact that the Hollywood fiction is intersecting with the political Islamic State fiction that they're fighting kind of breaks Saleh's brain. So he says, I do not know how to translate any of this. I don't know how to talk about this. I can't turn this into words, right? There's not enough, there's not language enough to explain all of this. Why? Because I do not know in how many worlds a person can live simultaneously before they lose themselves completely. So Saleh is talking from personal experience in the moment. Feels like this intersection is so nonsensical, so hard to comprehend that he feels like he's losing himself. So we just talked about the idea of many worlds, right? In this case, it kind of means many worldviews or many contexts that don't fit together. But does that always mean that in between these worlds, you may lose yourself? For Saleh, it's because he's so deep in mourning for Ali Akbar, it's hard for him to change gears. But for most people in daily life, we all kind of exist in multiple worlds at the same time, right? During the day, you guys are students, you walk into a classroom, that's one world. And then after class, maybe you go clubbing with friends, that's a completely different world. And you know it's a different world because if you walk into the club and you see your teacher, the two worlds don't make sense together. And then, of course, maybe during the holidays, you might go home and see your family, and that's yet another world. And you know that's a different world because imagine taking your clubbing friends to see your family, or imagine like you walk in the door and your teacher is talking with your family. Like these worlds don't fit together, right? And then you have other worlds, kind of like for this example, when you watch TV or YouTube or TikTok, the people you see on screen also belong to different worlds. And yet, most of us can handle this just fine. But if, like Saleh, you find yourself deeply uh, invested in one of your many worlds, for example, if, uh, let's say, you have a huge project due and you have 2 days left to do it, and you're really far behind. For those 2 days, you might be just grinding away at this project. You might be ignoring everyone else. You might be skipping all of your classes. If during those 2 days, suddenly, uh, like your parents show up, they want to surprise you, to pay you a visit, it might be hard for you, like not just practically speaking, but it might be hard for you mentally to deal with what's going on. So that may help you understand where Saleh is in this moment. Of course, grieving someone's death is a much deeper hole than simply like trying to finish a project. So for him, it's even harder to transition. Or I guess a closer example would be you're deep in that project and then your friends call you up and say, hey, we're going on a 5-day trip to Disneyland. Do you want to come? First of all, of course, you're too busy to go, but you might find yourself so deeply stuck in your project that you can't even comprehend the idea of, wait, a 5-day trip to Disneyland? What does that mean? You can't really wrap your mind around the idea of having fun for 5 days, in contrast to the how busy you are at the moment. Yeah. So the question is, what does he mean? I guess that's kind of what he means. Does it make sense? Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Especially because like his context is grieving in the middle of a war, and then the other one is a Hollywood sci-fi fantasy movie. Like these two really don't match. Okay, you guys have thoughts on number one? No? Okay, let's move on to number two. Do you think Saleh's planned ending for the Abbas show makes sense? Why or why not? If you remember, this is the show that Saleh is being forced to write for Iranian state TV about that sniper uh, hero in 2006 Iraq shooting the Americans. And this is the ending that he comes up with. He tells H, same page 64, tell O Channel that they must end the Abbas show with his falling for the enemy sniper woman. Abbas, if you remember from last week, he had the great idea that Abbas meets his nemesis, another sniper, and this time it's a woman. So the ending he proposes is Abbas falls for the enemy sniper woman, like he falls in love with her. Abbas and the woman begin a cat and mouse chase that is their version of a flirtation. The flirtation of the best two snipers in Iraq. But in the end, one of them has to kill the other. This is the law of this land. And it is not the man who kills the woman. It cannot be. And that's the end of the show. So, like, the question is, does that ending make sense? I mean, on one level, who cares, right? Because he's being forced to write it. It never made sense in the first place. It's pure propaganda. So, like, okay, it makes sense, doesn't make sense, nobody cares. But even though he's kind of being forced to write this show, he is still the person coming up with ideas. You can give in, but there are different degrees of giving in. You can give in a little, you can give in a lot. So even though he has to do a propaganda, there are different ways to do it. There are better ways, there are worse ways, there are more ethical ways, there are less ethical ways. So we can still talk about this question. Does this ending make sense for the show? Like, in terms of propaganda, okay, first of all, in terms of artistry, in terms of the art of TV plotting, the situation is like they already had a man sniper and a woman sniper. This kind of ties things together quite nicely, right? There's a man and a woman. Usually we expect them to have some kind of relationship with each other, but they're snipers, so they can't actually be together, and they're enemies. It also has a kind of like tragic feeling to it. Like they're star-crossed lovers. Like if they were not fighting each other, they might actually marry each other. And then finally, at the end, our hero dies. Instead of killing a woman, he would rather sacrifice himself. It's also kind of beautiful. So, like in terms of artistry, it's not bad. It's kind of logical. But what about in terms of propaganda? Right? The Iranian government wants this show to like make the Americans look bad and to provide entertainment to distract people. I think the novel actually said that like 2 weeks ago. So we know that's what the government wants. So in terms of propaganda, the fact that the show is ending is itself a bad thing. Because that means that state TV will have to come up with something new to replace the show, which is, I guess, harder than trying to find ways to keep the show going. Even when a TV show has overstayed its welcome, it starts doing some crazy, weird shit just to keep on going, it can still be quite fun. like fans of the show might start like uh talking shit about the show together. It becomes more of like a community event. And that would also still fulfill the propaganda purposes of the state. Distraction. Whether it's a good show or a bad show, as long as people are focusing on the show rather than anything else, that counts as a propaganda win. But ending the show, not the best strategy. But okay, let's say that they do agree to end the show. Is this an ending that supports the Iranian government's goals? Making the Americans look bad. Uh, the woman kills the hero. So yeah, it does make them look bad. And our hero is like uh, a chivalrous knight, rather sacrifice himself rather than kill a woman. So it makes the hero look good. Um, but like the idea of a flirtation, that may not be something that Iranian state would like to see. Like he's flirting with the enemy. That's not very good. Perhaps in propaganda terms, it may make it may like promote the state's interests better to have Abbas pretend like he's flirting with her, but he's actually setting a trap. But then she realizes it's a trap and kind of like turns the situation around. And so they end up at a point where they're both pointing their gun at each other, and one person has to kill the other, and Abbas refuses to pull the trigger. So that instead of a flirtation, which would make the enemy an equal, would give the enemy the respect of being an equal, we would then have a kind of seduction plot where it's always our guy trying to get the other person. I think that would please the Iranian government more. It wouldn't recognize the American sniper as, or the enemy sniper as an equal person. But like to go back to the earlier idea, like why are we even talking about the artistry and value of a clearly propaganda trash TV show? We're often used to thinking about movies, books, art as either like art or trash, right? It's good or it's bad. But actually, most works of art, especially movies and TV, exist somewhere in the middle. And this is because movies and TV are a collaborative effort. Very, very few movies and TV shows are made by one person only, or even like under 100 people. It takes a huge number of people to make these things, and therefore it takes a huge amount of money. And whoever gives you the money, therefore, also has some control over what you do. So movies and TV are by nature collaborative, and so it's very hard to have like 100% artistic movie with enough money and people to actually do what the, let's say, the director completely wants to do, like to fulfill the director's vision 100%. The director basically always has to make some compromises. So when we talk about the artistry of a TV show, we're not comparing it to the absolute ideal standard. We're comparing it to in that situation with these money sources and in this context, what is the best way to present the director's vision? Or I guess for a TV show, it's the showrunner's vision. And this is the basic idea behind what the 1960s French film critics called auteur theory. You guys know anything about film theory? So auteur theory today is the idea that despite the fact that a movie has so many people working on it, The general artistry and vision and direction are basically decided by one or at most two people, usually the director, sometimes also the producer or the writer. That is not what auteur theory used to mean. Its original idea is within the limitations and constraints of this system of filmmaking, how much influence can one or two people have on the end result? And usually that one person or two people would be the director and the producer or writer. But usually the writer. Producers are the people who actually uh, manage the budget, and so they're usually less involved with the artistry. I mean, if you think about it, the way that people talk about auteur theory today kind of doesn't make sense. Like, obviously, if you're making a movie, it's because somebody wanted to make the movie. If nobody had a grand vision for the movie, why are you throwing millions of dollars into this project? Whereas, how much can one or two people find the freedom of expression within a like strict financial budgetary system and commercial system to express their artistic ideas? That version of auteur theory seems much more interesting to think about. And so that's the approach that we took for this question. Our context here is it's state propaganda. The showrunner himself, Saleh, doesn't really want to do it, but he's forced to. And the material, right? The Abbas the sniper is based on a real sniper, but the actual documentary materials were stolen by Said, who ended up not being able to make a documentary anyway. So all of these are like disadvantages. And if Saleh really cares, he has to find the space within these limitations to create the most artistically, the show with the most artistic integrity that he can. So that's why we're talking about this ending. How much artistic integrity can be said to be in this ending? And as we just discussed, it's actually not a bad ending given those limitations. We also imagined another ending which would have been worse, but it would have better supported the Iranian government's propaganda purposes. So we can see that this ending, Saleh is actually like trying, even though he probably doesn't like this job, he probably doesn't want to waste time on this, but he's still trying. It's it can be hard for an artist or an expert to like try to do a bad job. Like you ever hear someone say um like an actor deliberately gives a bad performance and everyone praises the actor because it must have been hard to be that bad? Or like a musician or a singer deliberately performs off key and people say, wow, that must be hard because they're usually so good, they had to deliberately perform off key. When you know how to do something very well, it can be hard to deliberately do that thing less well. I remember I also teach English grammar. I remember like I used to like write emails using English that I imagined a student of English might use. So like poor grammar, poor spelling. Um, and it's really hard to pretend like the email was written by such a person and to make it look convincing rather than like putting in deliberate mistakes. Um, my grammar is so good, it's harder for me to have poor grammar than to have correct grammar. So that's kind of what we see here. Like even for a project Saleh doesn't really care about, he's still somehow pulling out pretty good plot ideas uh, for the show. And later on, we see him take this idea and he keeps working on it, fleshing it out. See if we can find it. Can't find it. But like later on, like somewhere in today's reading, he spends time working on this idea to like expand it into the length of a full episode. So even for a job he doesn't like, he still uh, puts in at least some effort to make it not as bad as it could be. Okay, you guys have other thoughts about question 2? Okay, let's take a long break and we'll come back at 10:10. during the break, I thought of a better ending for the Abbas show in terms of artistry. So, yes, you have Abbas the guy, and then you have a woman sniper, and they're kind of enemies. Everything follows Sade's idea. But then, after the woman shoots and kills Abbas, uh, our focus then follows the woman. And we now get to see her life, her comrades, what she cares about, how she feels about the war. And so by seeing the face of our enemy and the life of our enemy, we humanize the person. And we see that war is terrible for everybody, not just for our own side. I think the government would be really mad at this ending. But in terms of artistry, it's a really great way, I think, to elevate what um, for most of the show is pure propaganda, right? Good guys versus bad guys. It shows us that even the so-called bad guys are not really bad guys. Okay, so moving on to question 3. Why do you think the author recounts Saleh's dialogue with Shorty only after Shorty's death? How does this affect your reading experience? So let's take a look at this, page 69. So last week we saw that Mafiha and Dadong have co-written a book together, and they're holding like a book launch event debate. So here Saleh is at this event. On page 68, among the audience, he notices an entourage of war veterans, some deliberately still wearing combat fatigues, so like the combat uniforms. No doubt Dodong had brought them along for show as a part of his ongoing bravery extravaganza. The vets shuffled uncomfortably next to psychology and social science. This is a bookstore. They're standing next to the psychology and social science books, looking out of place, but endearing. They knew everything that was happening here was because of them. They were the spark for it. They were doers, though now diminished, serving as background decor for a piece of theater that had nothing to do with the war and everything to do with two men's literary ambitions. And one of these men is Shorty. So we see on page 69, it was then that I saw Shorty, one of the snipers of 3 fame, who would soon be dead alongside his comrades. So Shorty is one of the people who fought together with Ali Akbar, the guy who Saleh is still mourning. And Saleh just directly tells us that Shorty would soon be dead. Shorty's nose was in a book that looked to have been borrowed from the photography section. What are you doing here? I asked him. He didn't seem surprised. Saleh, we're on our way to Jebel. When a man says to you that he's headed for the front, you enter another region with him. It is as if everything you say to him or hear from him no longer quite belongs to the realm of life. Because, of course, the front line is where people could randomly die at any moment. So when you know that that's where they're going, nothing that they say now feels real. It feels like it's an in-between time. We don't know whether they'll come back from the front. I could not have known that soon Shorty would be dead from friendly fire. So he got shot. He's going to get shot by his own people accidentally. Inside some industrial barrel on the Syria-Iraq border. And like most of those deaths, his death too would have little to no color for me because I would not be close enough to witness it. Let's skip ahead. Your boys are with you? I asked Shorty. No, I came alone. They advertised this thing tonight in Knights of Damascus. Knights of Damascus is an online group. Well, well, what, Brother Saleh? This event. What do you think of it? He looked genuinely perplexed by the question. Nothing. That Dodong guy, he's a fake. The other guy, I don't know him. He doesn't look right either. So this gives us proof that when Saleh is bad-mouthing Dodong and bad-mouthing Mafiha, he's not just being salty. Like, this is what many ordinary people think as well. Dodong is a fake. Mafiha doesn't look right either. Next page. Shorty calls, who's talking right now? Mafiha. Shorty calls Mafiha a shit talker. I guess in English we might say he's a bullshitter. So they leave. Outside, Shorty lit a cigarette and said something under his breath. I could not make it out. He looks totally glum. He said, you know, the government is not giving Ali Akbar his martyrdom benefits. It's not like he exactly needs it now, I joked tastelessly. So this is interesting. Throughout the novel, we've seen Saleh say things that are kind of funny in a very dark way. I think this is the first time we see him make a joke that is not funny at all. And he knows this. He calls it tasteless. Shorty spat. You know what I mean, Saleh. His family, his mother. The man even had a wife. Are you going out to defend the holy places for the sake of the fringe benefits? Or are you going for Imam Hussein? Come on, Saleh. A man needs to feel some support in his death. Some martyrs get their faces on posters every year, and their families get allowances for life. Others, like poor Ali Akbar, may God have mercy on him, they don't even get 2 words of thanks from you-know-who. You should write something about these things in the paper. You-know-who probably is the government. Is this why you showed up here tonight? He didn't answer. They'll hang me by the balls, Shorty, if I write about stuff like that. He spat again. Then what's it all for? What are we doing all this for? I don't know. You tell me. You guys are the ones going out there without the right permissions from the guards, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, the best military unit in the Iranian military. You guys head out there alone and then get yourselves killed. But it's the guards who have to practically glue you together and ship you back home so your mothers can mourn over you. You ever think about that? Maybe it's their way of saying, whoever goes to fight without permission can look forward to an afterlife of obscurity and zero martyr benefits. That's not fair. Not much is. Shorty's eyes twinkled. But we're going legit this time. The guards came calling after we came back from Tal Afar. They're the ones shipping us out. They need guys who can carry the load, if you know what I mean. And they know we can. We proved it to them in Iraq. They're sending you to Syria, though, aren't they? Shorty nodded. Our war's almost over in Iraq. We need to graze elsewhere. You coming with us? No. But you were there recently. What's it like in Syria? Different. How different? You have to watch your back in Syria. If the Syrians on your side tell you they'll cover your flank, it probably means they don't, or they won't. There's brother against brother over there. It's different than Iraq. So what's a guy to do? Cover your own damn flank. Shorty laughed. That's a good one. Best advice I ever got. Shorty, what? Your brother comrade, Ali Akbar. There was no reason for him to step on a wire. You guys are better than that. Cover your flank, son. I beg you. Saleh, remember that village? I came out of the schoolhouse for just 1 minute, and boom, I'd stepped out for a smoke. I thought we were done in that accursed village. Now I have to live with this for the rest of my life. Ali Akbar was my brother, with Imam Hussein as my witness. Don't worry, the rest of your life won't be much longer. Syria will see to that. His face lit up, a mixture of worry and enthusiasm. Once again, looking forward to becoming a martyr. He looked like a boy about to smoke his first cigarette. You really think so? Yes. So please take care of all your business that you have to take care of first. If you need to bequeath this and that to someone, do so now. A guy like me, what does he have to bequeath? You make me laugh, Saleh. I'm not educated like you. I finished 7th grade, that's all. And then later I'd find out that officially they'd put down Shorty and his 2 comrades as having been martyred in Iraq, not Syria. It had been a border operation. None of this mattered then, and none of it would matter afterward. But at least Shorty's family would get the martyr allowance that Ali Akbar's family would never get. Shorty's operation had been official. Ali Akbar's hadn't. It was another stupid toss of the dice. Saleh, let's find a mosque and pray together, for old time's sake. 2 rakats each for the happiness of the soul of our brother Ali Akbar. I pointed the way to the nearest mosque. Do 2 rakats for me too. I have a little business inside. God protect you, brother. I turned to go. Saleh! I waited for him to speak. One day at the Eye of the Horse, we saw you bury a book. It was the first time you were there. We didn't know you then. So it was you guys who reported it. We didn't know what it was. We dug it up, just a book. But we didn't know what was in it. There was, some other handwriting. But the book was English, I think. We didn't understand it. Ali Akbar, he said it was our job to report it. Just to be sure you understand. I understand. So what was in the book? Wisdom. What did it say? The man writing those words, he'd lived through a war too. Who doesn't? He wrote that there's something cruel about the leaves they grant to the men at the front. Here, leave doesn't mean like a leaf. Leave means like a leave of absence. So like when the idea is like if you're fighting at the front and they let you take a break to go home, that feels cruel. And then, of course, Shorty asks the question that we're all thinking, what does that mean? It means you should be in Syria right now, or Iraq. Here, you don't belong. You need to be in the fight. From your mouth to God's ears, Saleh. Inshallah. So that's their conversation. The question is, this entire conversation happens when we know that Shorty is going to die. And does that have any effect on our reading experience? The novel kind of already gives us a hint, right? Here, right? When a man says he's headed for the front, it's as if everything you say to him or hear from him no longer quite belongs to the realm of life. It's like Shorty is here, but also not here. He's like in between. He's like a ghost. It's like you're talking to a future ghost. you know that this person's life does not have much time left. Um, and so like when they're small talking about the Dong and Mafiha, it kind of feels like, yeah, why is he wasting the rest of his precious life at this event? And then they go out and they talk about Ali Akbar's martyrdom benefits or the lack thereof. Um, and we know that this is something on Shorty's mind because he also wants to become a martyr. And we know that soon he will become a martyr. So, like during this discussion, we're kind of worried about, like, okay, but did he get his benefits? And then the novel tells us later, yes, right, he did get benefits. Um, he just, but by a bureaucratic maneuver, even though they're supposed to be fighting in Syria, they're close enough to Iraq for the mission to be categorized as fighting in Iraq, and that's why the government would give him martyrdom benefits. So it's not about who is a good fighter, who is a loyal fighter. It's purely who is lucky enough to be in the right place. So our worry that Shorty may not get benefits is replaced by cynicism about why he gets benefits. It's a completely random reason. Uh, then we have a discussion about like what Syria is like. Shorty has never been there. He wants to know. And so like Saleh gives him some advice, right? You have to take care of your own people. You can't depend on the Syrians. And we don't really know how Shorty, or it's friendly fire, right? Where is it? But it says that Shorty got killed by friendly fire, which means he got shot by people on his own side, probably Syrians. So this is also quite ironic. Saleh warns him to be careful of the Syrians, and indeed, the Syrians are why he dies. Um, then they say Shorty says he wants to go pray for Ali Akbar, and the connection here kind of presents Ali Akbar as uh, a guide for Shorty. Like this is the path that Shorty will be following soon. Not exactly the same, but also like fighting and becoming a martyr. And then finally, before they part, it is revealed that it was Ali Akbar and his team who reported Saleh for burying uh, the Marcel Proust's book, which is one thing that had been on Saleh's mind, right? He knows that he's always being watched, but he doesn't know who. He doesn't know why they would report him for doing this. Now he knows. And it's kind of fitting that the last thing Shorty says to him is a piece of information that offers Saleh closure. He no longer has to spend mental effort on this question. And then Saleh encourages him to go fight. And then Shorty dies. Like, if we had not known that Shorty would die, this whole conversation might feel more hopeful, right? He's asking for advice. He's trying to make up for past mistakes. It feels like maybe there's a future for him. And one part of that hope is if he does die, he might get martyr benefits. But in the event, we know what happens. He does die. He does get martyr benefits. The other stuff in his future never happens because he's dead. And even though he does get martyr benefits, the reason is not like a good justification. It's just a random reason. So even the benefit that he does get doesn't really feel like a good thing. So by telling us that Shorty will die and telling us that he dies from friendly fire, maybe from the Syrians, and that his martyr benefits are granted him for a random reason, it takes that hope we had for his future and kind of just destroys all of it. And it turns this conversation into like a sentimental, nostalgic, you might even say a tragic conversation. Saleh is talking with a dead man walking. Dead man walking is it's a phrase in English we use to describe people who are going to die, they just don't know it yet. Or maybe they do know it. The time just has not yet happened, but they're going to die soon. It's interesting to think about how the same series of events can be recontextualized, been presented with this conversation without any knowledge of the future, it would feel one way. But now that we know what's going to happen, and the novel uh, adds this future information in appropriate places inside the conversation, that changes the feeling of this conversation into an entirely opposite feeling. And the key here is narrative order, the arrangement of the order of information. So it's not just about what is in the book, it's also about how are these things arranged in order to create some kind of effect for the reader, to make us feel something. And from those feelings, maybe the book wants us to think something as well. Okay, you guys have any more thoughts on question 3? All right, question 4. Do you think irony and an acknowledgement of the absurd are more likely to mark someone as a Westerner? Why or why not? So on page 73, Saleh notices Cleric J and several young men talking with another man I'd never seen before. The new guy with them was a bit disheveled, and I could tell he wasn't one of us. Maybe he was around 40, maybe a little older. His eyes gave him away. There was irony in them, and an acknowledgement of the absurd. This man has to be a Westerner, I thought. So, like, why? What's the logic behind this conclusion? He looks into the guy's eyes. He has irony in his eyes. What does that mean? So, I don't know if you've noticed, but compared to many other languages, especially Chinese, English is a language that's full of irony. Basically, like if you talk to a native speaker of English, basically everything they say will have some underlying hint of irony, or it may be kind of joking, or there might be a little sarcasm. Like basically everything they say. And that can be hard to translate. That can be hard to explain to people who are not native speakers of English, even people who natively speak a language that also has irony might have a different kind of irony. Like the sarcasm might feel different, or like the ever-present possibility of a joke, the kind of joke might feel different. Humor and irony are cultural elements. So different cultures using different languages will have different versions of humor and irony. So apparently, Saleh thinks that the kind of irony in this guy's eyes is a Western kind of irony. The way that he thinks about what he says, the way that this guy thinks about what he himself says, as I just mentioned, right? Sometimes like someone speaking English, everything they say is kind of a joke. That kind of irony and an acknowledgement of the absurd. So the absurd is something that makes no sense and doesn't fit the context. It doesn't fit the situation. War is a context full of absurdity. There's so much random stuff happening in a war zone or on the battlefield. Whether it's Ali Akbar getting blown up because he steps on a mine when he shouldn't even be in the building, or whether it's the Mocab having so much food that they have to throw away a lot of food every day, despite the fact that soldiers always need to eat. Right? War is full of absurdities, situations that don't make sense. And in this guy's eyes, Saleh sees an acknowledgement of the absurd. So some people, when faced with these situations, might not be able to handle it. Like Saleh can't really handle Ali Akbar's death. Some people would deny it. Like they might think that it has to be done this way. There's no other way. There's nothing absurd about this situation. But this guy, when he sees something absurd, he's not afraid of it. He acknowledges it. He doesn't run away. He doesn't pretend like it's normal. He recognizes, yes, this indeed is absurd. So on the one hand, we can say there might be a cultural element, but there could also be the idea that this man is kind of an outsider. For people who volunteer to fight in this war, there are 2 or 3 main reasons, right? First, they might be mercenaries. They're fighting for money. Second, they might have their own religious faith. They're fighting to become martyrs. Or third, they might believe what the Iranian government is saying, we're fighting to defend the Holy Lands. Or they might believe the Americans, we're fighting to defend civilization or save civilization, some higher purpose. So if in pursuing these higher goals, they notice that this war is full of irony and full of absurdity, they might be too personally invested to be able to deal with that fact. They're more likely to try to take things seriously to achieve their higher goals. So the fact that this guy has no problem facing the irony and the absurdity is a hint that maybe this guy, as Saleh says, wasn't one of us. He doesn't belong to this situation. He's here maybe not for a higher goal, but for like personal interest or curiosity, or for his own ego. I guess when the Americans say they're going to save civilization, that's also an ego thing. But it's not for religious faith. It's not for martyrdom. And so that makes the guy more likely to be a Westerner. We don't really see like East Asian people fighting in this conflict, right? We don't see like Indians or like Chinese or Japanese or Koreans here. So I guess one reason is because Western countries have a longer tradition of intervening in global affairs, whether it's 19th century imperialism or whether it's 20th century neo-imperialism through the UN. Western countries just like to get into other people's business. So if he's not one of us, it's likely that he's a Westerner. So like what I was saying about irony earlier, have you guys noticed that? Like if you have like a native speaker of English, maybe teaching a class or like you're chatting with one, have you felt that kind of underlying layer of irony in everything they say? It can be hard to notice, but it's there. I'm using it right now, actually, because I'm also a native speaker. So that also tells us Saleh is quite observant. Like he has noticed these kinds of things. And if we think about the author, Salar Abdoh, he's an Iranian teaching in New York. So this is the kind of thing that he would notice on a daily basis, presumably. Okay, do you guys have thoughts about question 4? I guess that kind of goes to explaining what is so-called like American humor. Have you guys ever struggled with this kind of thing? Like it's an American TV show or like a movie, and there's a place where you know you're supposed to laugh, but you don't understand why people are laughing. It's probably because you're missing some of that sarcasm. That's like if you say something in English, there's a surface meaning, there's the connotation, there's the context, there's the psychological subtext, and then there's the irony. So you might not have gotten deep enough into the English. Okay, and then finally, question 5. Do you think it makes sense for H to be disappointed at Atia's happy marriage? Why or why not? So note the key part of this question is we're not talking about Saleh. We're talking about H, the state interrogator. This is quite interesting. So once again, Saleh is in the war zone on his cell phone talking to Atia. And Atia tells him, our mutual friend called me in for a talk. She meant H. He also wants to know if I'm happy in my marriage. I told him yes. He seemed disappointed. Then he asked where the hell you were. You disappeared again, he said, and he hasn't heard from you for a while. So, very simple, right? He asks her, are you happy in your marriage? She says yes, and he seems disappointed. Why? Why would the state interrogator be disappointed that Atia is happy in her marriage? Why would it be better for him if Atia were unhappy in her marriage? Like, what's the difference? Or maybe we should approach this from another angle, which is what does a state interrogator care about? What does he want? I think he wants control. He wants it. He wants the people that he manages to be easy to control. He wants them to follow whatever the state wants them to do. So the most common way to do this is to exploit unhappy areas. This is how you get somebody to turn traitor to their own country. This is how you turn a spy, turn somebody into a spy, or turn a spy into a double agent. You find something that they're unhappy about. Whether it could be money, they feel like they're not being paid enough. It could be that they feel like there are not enough opportunities in their own country for their children's future. So you can promise them like, oh, we'll send you to better schools and fund your children's education. It might be that they are unhappy with the way that their own government is doing things. And so you would exploit this by telling them, if you like do 1 or 2 small acts of betrayal, that will show your government that they're not doing the right thing, that they should be more careful about this situation, etc. So manipulation often depends on areas where people are unhappy or unsatisfied. So Atia's marriage to Mafiha, we learn about this through Saleh's eyes. So of course, we think that this is Atia kind of giving in. Like she feels like she has reached the age where she should get married. Mafiha seems like a powerful, influential guy. He's not a bastard. Might as well marry him. But we're seeing this through Saleh's eyes. According to Atya, she keeps saying that this is what she wants. Yes, she's settling down, but it's not like Mafiha is the least worst option. To Atya, he actually is a pretty okay option. So for Saleh, of course, that makes him feel even more hurt. But for H, that means that this is not a marriage that he can exploit. He can't say like, if you're mad at your husband, you can do this to get back at him or something like that. Or if you really don't like working under your husband, you can find another job. We'll find a job for you here and you can do things for your government. These are no longer on the table if Atya actually does love her husband. And it also adds another point of uncertainty, because if she does love her husband and her husband does love her, then in order for H to manipulate one of them, he has to manipulate both of them. And that, of course, is harder, or at least it takes more effort. Like, think about how H manipulated Saleh into writing that TV show. Basically, their conversations have been about like burying that Marcel Proust book, about visiting Saleh's mother, about Miss Homa's paintings. Never once does H bring up Atya and their Saleh's relationship with Atya, which I think is intentional. H is not his therapist, right? So in Saleh's, let's call it moment of heartbreak, H finds other stuff for him to do. And the psychology might be that by giving Saleh other stuff to do, he would want to do those things to kind of not keep thinking about Atya's marriage. And so like writing that TV show, Saleh, of course, doesn't like the idea, but it's nothing to do with Atya, so why not? And then as we just saw, the ending of the TV show is another tragic love story. You can see that he might be putting some of his own emotions into that ending. It is a so-called neat or clean ending, right? Man and woman are in a kind of flirtation, and then the woman kills the man, end of story. Very clean. Whereas Saleh's relationship with Atya is anything but clean. They thought about being together, but their state interrogator convinced them not to be together. Now Saleh pines for her. She's married to his boss. They keep working together. He can't avoid her. He calls her in the middle of war, only to learn news that he doesn't want to learn. It's a very messy situation between them. So you can see why maybe Saleh would want to create a cleaner situation for his TV show. State manipulation is tricky that way. It's not just about what they want you to do. It's also about what they don't tell you they want you to do. Absence is the presence of nothing. Just because something doesn't exist doesn't mean that it has no influence. If there's a course that you're not taking, it's not just like, oh, I'm not taking the course. It means that you're not learning what that course is teaching you, right? Nothing is still a kind of existence. And that's something that propagandists and state interrogators like H know how to use as well. If you ever get interrogated by the police and you feel like maybe they're trying to pin you as a suspect, you shouldn't answer any questions. Even if your answers sound innocent, like you're explaining why you weren't there at that time, or you're explaining why you have no motive to do that thing, if you don't have proof, then it's just your words. And the police or any other interrogator, if they ask you questions that you're willing to answer and you give them answers, and then later if they ask you a question where you don't want to answer, that itself could be used against you in court. The fact that you answered the other questions, but not this question, is also information. So interrogators know how to use nothing. They know how to use absence and lack as another source of information or another means of manipulation. This is something that I think a lot of people neglect. We often think about what we do. I guess we less often think about what we don't do. Okay, you guys have other thoughts about today's discussion? Okay, next week, please read chapters 10 and 11. And do try to come earlier. Like if you came in late today, I also came in late, but I didn't come in as late as you did. If we have 10 people, then we can have group discussions, and it will be much less boring for you, right? I keep standing here, I'm talking and talking. You're kind of trying not to fall asleep. If we have group discussions, you're more invested in the class. So like even after the discussion, when I'm talking, because you have thought about your question before, you're also paying more attention to what I say about your question as well. It's a more effective and interesting way to learn. So do try to be on time in the future. And now let's take attendance.